Those little stunts, Cruz continued, his voice sharpening with conviction, generate hundreds of millions of dollars that go straight back into the industry, back into the economy. They create work for thousands of people. They fund new films, new stories, and new dreams. The words hung in the air like electricity. At the table, Sarah N. shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her nervous glance darting between Tom and Joy as though she desperately wished she could dissolve into the background. On the opposite side, Sunny Hostin opened her mouth as if to speak. But something fear, uncertainty, or maybe simple professional caution made her stop. She glanced between Joy and Tom, her expression filled with quiet alarm. Joy Behar didn't flinch. She waved her hand dismissively, rolling her eyes with theatrical disdain. "Oh, please," she scoffed. "Spare me the economics lecture. We both know that's not what this is about." She leaned in again, eyes narrowing with predatory precision. "This is about you using your fame, your influence, to legitimize fringe beliefs that harm real people." A ripple of discomfort ran through the audience. A few people murmured, shifting in their chairs, unsure whether they were witnessing a normal interview or something unraveling right in front of them. Near the edge of the stage, Cruz's publicist stood like a statue, face pale, jaw clenched, hands poised as though ready to swoop in and physically remove his client from the set at a moment's notice. "Fringe beliefs," Cruz repeated. But this time, the cool composure in his voice was replaced with something darker, something dangerous. His jaw tightened, his eyes locked on Joy, and the space around him seemed to shift as the light-hearted Hollywood veneer he had worn for decades began to thin. "Joy," he said slowly, "you're making accusations without a shred of basis. I've never forced my beliefs on anyone. I've never used my platform to hurt people. In fact, I've done the opposite. I've used it to entertain millions around the world, to bring excitement, joy, inspiration. That's exactly the problem." "Tom," Joy pressed on, her tone almost gleeful now, like someone who had been waiting years for this exact moment. "You have all this influence, all this power, and you use it irresponsibly. People look up to you, young people, impressionable people, and what kind of example are you setting?" Whoopi tried again, her voice firm but weary. "Joy, I really think we should let him thin." "Whoopi," Cruz interrupted, his voice still controlled but now burning with unmistakable intensity. His eyes never left Joy. "No, I want to hear exactly what she's accusing me of." He leaned slightly forward, the tension stretching tight across the room, "because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like I was invited here under false pretenses," he said, "just so you could ambush me with your personal agenda." The studio was silent now. Even the cameras seemed hesitant to move, as if they, too, felt the weight of the moment. Joy's smirk widened, slow and deliberate, like a match being dragged across stone. "My personal agenda," she echoed. "Tom, my agenda is the truth. Something you seem to have a very complicated relationship with." Something in Cruz snapped, not loudly, not visibly, but unmistakably. His posture shifted, shoulders squaring. The aura of a polished superstar, the charming smile, the careful diplomacy began to peel away. What emerged was the man underneath, the fighter, the obsessive worker, the performer who built an empire on discipline, endurance, and raw will. "The truth," Cruz repeated, the word rolling off his tongue with a dangerous calm. He leaned forward, voice dropping to a near whisper, a whisper that somehow carried more menace than a scream. "You want to talk about the truth, Joy?" He paused, letting the silence thicken around them. "The truth is that I've spent 30 years of my life dedicating everything, my time, my body, my sanity, to entertaining people. 30 years of 14-hour days. 30 years of injuries, broken bones, surgeries, physical therapy, and months of brutal training. 30 years of pushing myself to the absolute edge so the audience gets something special, something unforgettable." His eyes locked onto hers, unwavering. "And you sit there," he continued, "in your comfortable chair, throwing accusations and passing judgment without any understanding of what that actually means." A collective gasp shivered through the room. Joy, sensing she had finally struck a raw nerve, leaned in even closer, her voice rising with triumphant aggression. "Oh, I understand perfectly. Tom, I understand that when you have a platform like yours, you have a responsibility, and you have failed in that responsibility spectacularly." Sunny Hostin shook her head, visibly distressed. Sarah N. looked as though she was seconds away from standing up and walking off the stage altogether. But Joy wasn't stopping now. If anything, she was only getting started, and Tom Cruise, after a lifetime of public professionalism, was about to hit his breaking point. "You want to talk about responsibility?" Cruise said suddenly, his voice slicing through the air like a blade. Joy's eyes narrowed, but she didn't look away. "Yes," he continued, "let's do that. Let's talk about the responsibility of a journalist, or someone who claims to be one to actually do their research, before making wild accusations on national television." For the first time, Joy's smirk faltered, just for a moment, a crack in the armor, but she masked it quickly, pulling the smirk back into place as though daring him to continue.
What happens when one of Hollywood's biggest megastars walks into what he believes will be a friendly, upbeat, promotional appearance. And it's to be met with a blindsiding attack that tears open the polished surface of daytime television and exposes the hostility simmering underneath. You're about to witness one of the most shocking, explosive moments ever imagined on a talk show. A moment where even Tom Cruise, a man known globally for his discipline, professionalism, and legendary composure, finally feels the pressure crack through his calm exterior. Before we dive deeper, make sure you're settled in, because this fictional story escalates in intensity with every passing second. What begins as a routine interview quickly spirals into a confrontation so fierce, so unexpected that viewers wouldn't forget it for years. The atmosphere inside the View studio that morning was noticeably off. Not hostile, not chaotic, just unusually tense, as though the air itself was holding its breath. Tom Cruise had agreed to appear on the show to promote the latest installment of his blockbuster Mission Impossible franchise. He expected the usual promotional routine: questions about large-scale stunts, globe-trotting filming locations, grueling physical training, and maybe a few playful behind-the-scenes anecdotes. Nothing controversial, nothing heavy, nothing he hadn't handled 1,000 times before. But the reception he walked into was something entirely different. As Cruise settled into the guest chair, offering the audience his iconic smile, a mixture of confidence, charisma, and genuine enthusiasm, Joy Behar leaned forward with a smirk that should have been his first warning. Her expression wasn't welcoming. It wasn't warm. It was the look of someone who had been waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The other co-hosts, Whoopi Goldberg, Sarah N., and Sunny Hostin, seemed oddly subdued. They exchanged quick glances with one another, glances that hinted at discomfort, perhaps even concern. It was as if they knew something Cruise did not, as if they could already sense the brewing storm. "Tom, welcome back to The View," Whoopi began warmly, doing her best to maintain the professional, friendly tone expected from a daytime talk show. "We're really excited to have you here and to talk about your new film. It looks incredible." "Thank you for having me," Cruise replied, his energy bright as always. "I'm thrilled to be here. This movie has been such an amazing journey, and I can't wait for everyone to experience the work we put into it." He barely finished his sentence before something in the room shifted. It was subtle. Just a pause. A breath held too long, then Joy Behar's voice sliced through the air like a sharpened blade. "Tom," she said, her tone dripping with deliberate challenge, "before we talk about your little action movie, I think we need to address the elephant in the room: your personal beliefs, the way they influence your decisions, both on screen and off." The studio froze. The audience fell into a stunned, heavy silence, the tension instantly thickening. Even those who had come only to enjoy a live taping of a fun, energetic interview could feel the sudden shift in tone. Cruise's smile slipped. For the briefest moment, a blink, flicker, but being the seasoned professional he was, he quickly regained his composure. "I'm sorry, Joy," he said calmly, "but I'm here today to talk about the film. My personal beliefs are just that personal." But Joy had no intention of backing down. In fact, she looked almost invigorated, as though this confrontation was exactly what she had come to the table for. "Oh, come on, Tom," she said, leaning back with a smug, satisfied expression. "You're a public figure. People pay millions of dollars to watch you on screen. Don't you think they deserve to know what kind of person they're supporting?" Cruise inhaled deeply, a subtle sign of frustration edging into his otherwise controlled demeanor. "I think audiences deserve to be entertained," he answered, his voice steady but firmer now. "That's what I've devoted my life to: creating stories, moments, and experiences that inspire people and bring them joy." Sensing the argument escalating, Whoopi stepped in once more. "Joy, maybe we should talk about the movie first, and then—" "No," Whoopi, Joy snapped, cutting her off without hesitation. "I think this is exactly the conversation we need to have. Tom here," she gestured dismissively, "has been avoiding real questions for years, hiding behind his carefully controlled publicity machine. But this isn't one of those interviews." The camera cut back to Cruise. His jaw tightened. His hands gripped the armrests of his chair just a little too firmly to ignore. "Joy," he said in a tone that carried both irritation and restraint, "with all due respect, I've never hidden from anything. I've been open about my life, my work, and my dedication to my craft. So tell me, what exactly are you implying?" Joy's eyes gleamed with a spark of confrontation, kind of glee that only appears when someone feels they've cornered their opponent. "What I'm saying, Tom," she replied slowly, "is that you use your fame to promote ideas that many people consider problematic, even dangerous? And then you expect us all to just ignore that and focus on your little stunts and explosions?" "My little stunts?" Cruz repeated, his voice rising ever so slightly. "Those little stunts employ thousands of hard-working people. They create jobs for stunt coordinators, special effects teams, camera crews, sound engineers, and entire departments of dedicated professionals who rely on these productions to support their families." The fire in his tone made the audience stir, whispering among themselves. For the first time since he walked onto that stage, Tom Cruise wasn't simply the polished superstar. He was a man defending the people he worked with, the industry he loved, and the principles he believed in. And this was only the beginning of the confrontation that would define the rest of the interview.
The tension in the studio had reached a breaking point. A fragile silence stretched tight across the set like a wire ready to snap. Tom Cruise leaned back slightly in his chair, eyes locked on Joy, every muscle in his jaw visibly tightening. When he finally spoke, his words were calm but cold enough to freeze the air. "Because from where I'm sitting," he said, each syllable deliberate, "it sounds like you invited me here under false pretenses, just so you could ambush me with your personal agenda." A ripple of shock moved through the audience. No one dared to breathe. The only sound was the low, steady hum of the cameras capturing every second of the confrontation. The other hosts sat frozen, unsure whether to intervene or let the moment burn out on its own. Joy's smirk widened, slow and self-satisfied. She crossed her arms, leaning back in her chair like a queen settling deeper onto her throne. "My personal agenda," she echoed, eyebrows raised. "Tom, my agenda is the truth. Something you seem to have a very complicated relationship with." The words hung in the air like a slap, and that was the moment something unmistakable shifted in Tom Cruise's demeanor. The polished media-trained movie star began to fade. What replaced him was something raw, older, forged from decades of discipline, ambition, and sheer force of will. The version of Tom the public rarely saw: the fighter, the survivor, the man beneath the legend. "The truth," Tom repeated, but he didn't shout. He didn't raise his voice. Instead, he whispered softly, dangerously, the kind of whisper that made the entire room lean in, made the moment feel heavier than any scream could have. "You want to talk about the truth, Joy?" he continued. "The truth is that I've spent 30 years of my life dedicated to entertaining people. 30 years of 14-hour days, 30 years of injuries, broken bones, physical therapy, 30 years of pushing myself to the absolute limit so audiences around the world could feel something excitement, joy, wonder, hope." His voice rose slightly, not in volume, but in intensity. "And you sit there in your comfortable chair, throwing accusations at me, passing judgment on a life you've never lived, a sacrifice you've never made, and a dedication you clearly don't understand." The soundstage felt smaller now, tighter, as though the walls themselves were closing in on the table where the two sat in a silent standoff. Joy leaned in, her eyes gleaming with the thrill of the conflict. She could feel the audience hanging on every word. She could feel the cameras capturing a moment that would be replayed endlessly. And she wanted more. "Oh, I understand perfectly, Tom," she said, her voice coated with mock sympathy. "I understand that when someone has a platform as massive as yours, they have a responsibility. They have influence. They shape opinions. They shape culture. They shape minds. And I think—" But Tom cut her off with a gesture sharp, decisive. "No," he said, "you don't think, you judge." Joy blinked, startled for a fraction of a second before regaining her composure. Tom continued, leaning forward now, mirroring her earlier assertiveness. The audience watched, transfixed, as he spoke with a conviction that came from some place deep inside him. "For 30 years, he said, I've trusted that the people interviewing me were interested in the craft, the work, the passion behind what I do. I've trusted that they cared about storytelling, about the thousands of jobs and dreams that go into every project. But what I see today, what I'm sitting in front of right now, is nothing but a setup." He gestured around the table. "You didn't bring me here for a conversation. You brought me here for confrontation, not to understand, but to attack, not to ask questions, but to score points." Joy's jaw clenched just slightly, betraying the first crack in her confidence. Tom continued, his voice now steady and resonant. You say your agenda is the truth, but the truth isn't something you decide. The truth isn't something you twist for drama or ratings. The truth is earned. It's lived. And I have earned mine every day of the last 3 decades. The silence that followed was dense, electric. Even the audience seemed unsure whether they were witnessing an argument, a breakdown, or a declaration of war. Joy inhaled slowly, steeling herself as she leaned closer, refusing to back down. Tom, she said, a platform like yours comes with power, and power comes with responsibility. Tom finished for her, his eyes locked on hers. I know that, I live that. But responsibility doesn't mean surrendering your identity. It doesn't mean abandoning your beliefs because someone else tells you to. And it certainly doesn't mean sitting quietly while someone misrepresents who you are. Joy opened her mouth to respond, but Tom wasn't done. You asked for the truth, he said. So here's mine. He paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. I won't let you twist my life into some narrative you can exploit. I won't let you disrespect my work, my team, or the millions of people who've believed in me. You want a headline. You want a controversy. You want a villain. He shook his head slowly. Find someone else. The words hit the studio like a thunderclap. Joy straightened, realizing she had pushed him to the edgy end, beyond it, but she wasn't finished, and neither was he. The clash that was about to erupt would push the already explosive confrontation to a level no one in the studio was prepared for. The air inside the studio shifted as Tom Cruise leaned forward, his posture still composed but unmistakably tense. I think people have a right to be entertained, he responded, his voice low and controlled, though a sharp edge had begun to creep into it. That's what I've dedicated my entire career to, bringing stories to life. Stories that inspire, uplift, and entertain audiences all around the world. But the calm veneer was cracking, and everyone in the studio could feel it. Whoopi Goldberg, sensing the tension climbing like a pressure gauge about to burst, jumped in quickly. Joy, maybe we should focus on the movie first, and then, no, Whoopi, Joy snapped, slicing through the attempt at diplomacy with a tone that was colder and sharper than before. She wasn't interested in smoothing things over. She was here for confrontation. She was here for headlines. I think this is exactly what we should be talking about. Tom here has spent years avoiding real questions, hiding behind his publicity machine and these carefully crafted, PR-approved interviews. She leaned back with theatrical confidence. Well, this isn't one of those interviews. The camera zoomed slightly closer, catching the subtle shift in Tom's expression. His jaw tightened, his fingers curled around the arms of his chair. The charming Hollywood smile was long gone. Joy, he said, trying to hold on to a thread of composure. With all due respect, I've never hidden from anything. I've always been open about my work, my life, and my dedication to my craft. So let me ask you, what exactly are you trying to get at here? That was all the invitation Joy needed. Her eyes lit up with the kind of malicious delight that only comes from pushing exactly the button she had been aiming for. What I'm getting at, Tom, she said slowly, savoring every word, is that you use your platform to promote ideas that a lot of people find dangerous, irresponsible, harmful. A wave of murmurs rippled through the audience. Even the cameramen exchanged glances. Joy leaned forward again, elbows on the table. And yet you expect everyone to ignore that, she continued, and just focus on your little stunts and explosions. Tom let out a breath, the kind that warns everyone the temperature is about to drop. My little stunts, he repeated, his voice rising, not loud, but sharp. Those little stunts employ thousands of people. They support stunt coordinators, special effects teams, camera crews, sound technicians, pyrotechnics, experts, entire departments filled with hard-working people. Those stunts generate hundreds of millions of dollars that flow back into the industry, keeping studios alive, funding new films, new jobs, new dreams. On the opposite side of the table, Sarah N. shifted in her seat, visibly uncomfortable. She looked like she wanted to sink under the table and disappear. Sunny Hostin kept glancing from Tom to Joy, her lips pressed tightly together, caught somewhere between professionalism and the urge to intervene. But Joy wasn't letting up. Oh, please, she scoffed, waving her hand dismissively. Spare me the economics lecture. We both know this isn't about the money or the jobs. This is about you using your fame, your influence, your spotlight to legitimize fringe beliefs. That hurt real people who don't have your millions, your resources, your safety net. A low, uneasy groan moved through parts of the audience. The energy in the room was shifting from excitement to discomfort. Offstage, Tom's publicist stood stiffly at the edge of the curtains, hands hovering as if ready to pull him out at the slightest signal. Her expression screamed one thing: "This is a disaster." Tom's voice, when he finally spoke again, had changed. It wasn't just controlled, it was dangerous. "Fringe beliefs," he repeated slowly, the words dripping with restrained anger. "Joy, you're making accusations without any basis. I've never forced my beliefs on anyone. I've never used my platform to hurt anyone. I have spent my life creating stories that bring people together, stories that bring joy, hope, excitement to millions of fans worldwide." Joy tilted her head, eyes narrowing with predatory satisfaction. She could sense the cracks. She could sense the unraveling. "And that's exactly the problem, isn't it?" she said, her tone almost gleeful. "You have all this influence, all this power, and you use it irresponsibly. People look up to you, Tom. Young people, impressionable people. What kind of example are you setting for them?" Whoopi tried again, voice firmer now, attempting to take back control of the runaway train. "Joy, I really think," but this time, it wasn't Joy who cut her off. It was Tom. "Whoopi," he said sharply, turning to her for only a second before his laser-like focus swung back to Joy. The intensity in his eyes was unmistakable, the same fire he brought to his most dramatic roles, except this time it wasn't scripted. "I want to hear exactly what she's accusing me of." He leaned forward, every inch of him radiating tension. Every host froze. The audience froze. Even the studio lights seemed to dim. This fictional scenario had just crossed from uncomfortable to electrifying, the kind of moment that would be replayed, dissected, and debated for years if it were real. Tom Cruise versus Joy Behar, Hollywood charm versus daytime fire. And neither of them was backing down. What happened next would turn this already volatile confrontation into one of the most explosive talk show moments ever imagined.